Good morning, everyone. I have to pardon my laptop. It's a long story, but it's here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Kordick. I'm 15, and I currently go to Central High School. I've been part of the youth group now for several years, now allowing me to travel to several different places for work, including Connecticut, South Dakota, St. Louis, and now Chicago. But I don't think anything was quite like this year's trip to West Garfield Park in Chicago, a place I never even knew existed, and now I will never forget. We worked with an organization called DOOR. They had youth groups, just like ours, come and spend the week sleeping in a church. They had groups go out every morning to different sites all over the city. All they were really trying to do there was to make a small difference. But quite honestly, this year's work trip made me feel like we were making the biggest difference. It truly did. I felt like our Justice League really brought it this year. We completely transformed a community garden, and I felt really good about it. That day, we met a woman named Ellen. She took care of all the community gardens in the area. She is someone I will never forget. She taught me things I would never have even given the slightest thought about. She knew that when she went to these gardens, she was not in her own neighborhood. She knew to be respectful at all times and to always compliment the people she ran into. She knew that this was not her place. I never really realized that, but it's a true statement that you really have to put into consideration when working in communities that are not yours. Now, you really have to see it to understand, but her car was like her own big wheelbarrow, and it really showed her determination toward working on these gardens. It was like nothing I have ever seen. She really did not care that it was dirty. She even kind of liked it. And one thing Ellen taught me that should never be forgotten is to never stop working towards something you truly care about. She was living proof of that saying. She was still working hard to make these gardens beautiful, and she loved doing it. It was truly an inspiration. So sure, we sweated a lot, had to wake up early every morning, and had to work hard. But that's the idea. And on our way home, I thought about it, and I really didn't mind it. It was worth it. And it was truly an experience that changed me as a person. There's just one last thing, and that is thank you to Sarah Noseda and to all the chaperones who put up with us for a week, and to everyone who made the trip possible, because it really was an experience that I will never forget.
We are here to talk to you about our Chicago Youth Service trip. When you hear Chicago, you think skyline or Marshall Fields, while your vision is only half of what we saw. We saw the half of crime, poverty, hunger, and many other troubling obstacles for many young boys and girls and older. But when we left, it still felt like we weren't done. Our service stretched from packaging food for mothers and children to trimming a community garden. Every day, when all of us got back, we'd plop on our mattresses and say, "What a day." And then I would think that a lot of the kids out there don't have a mattress to plop on, and say, "Well, how was their day?" They didn't have one. They either stood inside and did nothing, or hung around where cops were forced to make them move to somewhere else. When they asked us what we did, well, every day when all of us got back, the door staff asked us where we did and didn't see the face of God that day. I always put staff. They fed us and took us into their church and let us shower. Then after work, we had free time. And ask any guy who went on the trip what they did during free time, and they tell you, played hearts. But I think I most enjoyed our free days where we walked Navy Pier and the city. Oh yeah, and you know that common rule, try not to give sugar to kids? Yeah, that goes for certain adults too. Mike and David were literally dancing and bouncing off the walls, while the mother of the trip, Sarah, who had decided to get decaf, just said stop. But what we enjoyed wasn't what the service trip was about. It was helping the other half of Chicago that people don't usually see.
Hi. I'm here to tell you about a moment that I had on my trip. Now, there's a moment that you can all experience too. It happens when you hear something or feel something or just see something that changes your life forever. This moment could be brief or it could extend for months on end. It's a moment you have where you have a self-realization that everything that you used to think can be completely changed. Now, this is so big, it's almost impossible to explain how large it is on yourself, but I'm going to try anyway. On the third day of our door trip, we were all sitting downstairs, we were playing games. The door leader told us to come upstairs, and as we did, we walked in, and I saw a man who was about a head and a half taller than I was, and it looked like he was built like a football star, and just dressed like I normally would. He had a huge, deep voice, and needless to say, this guy was awesome. He started telling me about his life, about how he himself used to be homeless. He talked about getting on the train, how people wouldn't look at him. He talked about a friend that he had, that when he went to church and he told his story, people started scooting away from him at a church. That's just low. Walter then looked right at me and started talking about how when you look away from anyone that you may think is homeless, that makes them feel less than a human. And to be a human is the simplest thing we can all do. And to feel less than that, it's just heartbreaking. So I looked back on myself and I realized I've been doing that my whole life. I've been making people feel less than what they are, and that disgusted me. I decided to change that by looking at people, no matter who they are, right in the eye, whether I'm shaking their hand, whether I see them across the hallway. The next day, we all got on a train, and I tried doing this and may have taken a little too far. I would get on the train and just stare. It got awkward, and I realized I was probably taking this a little too far. Now, whether you do it or not, I would like you all to go out and just take this one, try it once. Just whether you're talking to someone, whether you don't know who they are, just look them in the eye. Just make them feel like they deserve at least your eye contact. Maybe smile, nod your head. Make them feel human.